Welcome back to the Deep Dive, and a very warm welcome to the channel Book on a Shelf.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we are strapping in for one of the tightest, most terrifying psychological journeys that literature has ever given us.
I think that's the perfect way to put it.
We are taking on Edgar Allan Poe's absolute masterpiece of suspense, The Telltale Heart.
And it really is arguably his most perfect piece of short fiction. I mean, it's all about its relentless focus.
Right.
It doesn't rely on, sprawling Gothic castles or these really complex backstories.
No, it's just one room, one man.
Exactly. This story, it works entirely as a sustained monologue. It's a confession, really, delivered straight to the listener, a frantic, high-stakes defense of sanity.
And that's it. Our source material for this is the text itself, and we've sourced it from the Poe Museum, which really gives us that immediate, authentic feel for a classic that was first published, back in January of 1843.
That's right. And that directness, that focus, is why it still resonates so powerfully today. It forces you, the listener, into this immediate and very uncomfortable intimacy with the narrator.
You're a part of it.
You are. You're his confessor, but you're also his judge, all at the same time.
So our mission for this deep dive is, well, it's explicitly a psychological one. We want to really dissect this narrative structure, track the narrator's desperate claims of sanity, and just watch how his carefully built world collapses.
Through self-deception and eventually this total auditory hallucination.
Yes. We want to pull out those aha moments about Poe's genius in using, the unreliable narrator.
Which means we have to approach every single sentence with a bit of skepticism, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
We have to remember that everything we're told is filtered through the mind of a man who is actively describing an irrational act.
While trying to convince us he's the most rational person in the room. And he doesn't waste any time, does he? He just throws down the gauntlet immediately. I mean, the opening line has to be one of the most provocative hooks in all of American literature. He doesn't start with a story. He starts with a defense. He says, "True, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but why will you say that I am mad?"
And that challenge right there, that's the starting point for this entire deep dive.
Okay, so let's start there, that opening line. It immediately sets up his whole argument, doesn't it?
It does. He's not denying his condition. He's very upfront about being nervous. He even connects it to a disease.
But he claims this disease had a sort of an unexpected side effect.
Right, and this is the core of his argument. He insists it didn't dull his senses, it refined them, it made them sharper.
He argues that this heightened perception is actually proof of his rational mind. That is the very opposite of madness.
Exactly. He boasts that the disease sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. It's a critical move for him right out of the gate to link this extreme sensory perception to rationality.
Why is that so crucial, though? Why start there?
Well, you have to think about the context of the 19th century. Terms like nervousness were kind of a catch-all for a lot of psychological and emotional issues.
Okay.
It could imply hysteria or maybe a moral weakness, but not necessarily outright madness, which, that implied a total loss of reason.
So he's trying to find a loophole.
He's trying to occupy a space above the common idea of a lunatic. He's saying a madman would be oblivious, but me, I'm hyper-aware.
And that is Poe's first brilliant psychological trick. He claims that extreme sensitivity is proof of rational thought, and he backs this up with an almost unbelievable claim about his hearing.
I mean, it's an incredible claim. He says he heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell.
It's total perception. If he can perceive everything, from the celestial to the infernal, then how could we possibly say he's detached from reality?
He's using it to challenge our judgment right from the start. He practically leans into us when he says, "Hearken, and observe how calmly I can tell you the whole story."
And that word calmly is key.
It is. The calmness and the meticulous detail of the story he's about to tell, that's supposed to be the overwhelming evidence of his sound mind.
Even as he's about to detail a horrific, calculated crime.
Especially then.
The ultimate irony there is that the very calmness he's trying to project is what makes the whole thing so cold and, frankly, so disturbing.
Right.
But if we follow his logic for a moment, hyper-awareness and control, then we have to ask the next question, the motive. And this is where a conventional crime story just completely falls apart.
It does. He works so hard to eliminate every logical, common reason for murder. He's crystal clear about it. Object there was none. Passion there was none.
So this isn't a crime of rage or greed or anything we would normally recognize.
Not at all. He even stresses his affection for the victim. I loved the old man, he says. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult.
And he makes sure we know there's no financial motive. For his gold I had no desire.
So once you strip all that away, greed, revenge, passion, self-defense, what are you left with?
Something purely psychological.
Exactly, something symbolic. The crime is born entirely of obsession, which brings us to the vulture eye.
The entire reason for the act is displaced onto one single, solitary thing. A physical feature that just consumes him.
Yes. He thinks it was his eye. Yes, it was this.
And the description he gives is just designed to make you feel uneasy. A pale blue eye with a film over it.
And he compares it obsessively to the eye of a vulture.
Vultures, of course, being symbols of death, decay, predatory waiting. So the eye isn't just an annoyance for him.
No, it's a constant looming reminder of mortality, of impending doom.
And the physical effect it has on him is profound. He says, "Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold."
And from that feeling, by degrees, very gradually, he says he made up his mind to take the life of the old man.
And this is the key phrase. "And thus rid myself of the eye forever."
That is the critical psychological displacement that Poe is putting on display here. The narrator states quite explicitly it was not the old man who vexed him.
It was his evil eye.
Right. And this taps into this, this ancient cultural idea of the malachio, or the evil eye, the belief that a certain kind of gaze can bring misfortune or even death.
So he's rationalizing the act. He's not committing murder in his own mind.
He's destroying a malignant object that threatens his own well-being. He's turning murder into an act of self-preservation.
The brilliance of that is showing us how a person can feel genuine affection for someone while also seeing a single part of them as an object that needs to be eradicated.
That intense focus on one single feature, that's already the first big step into madness, no matter how calmly he tries to tell the story.
And that displacement is key, isn't it? Because if he hated the old man himself, the crime might be reckless, passionate.
But it isn't. Since the object is just the eye, the narrator can approach the whole thing with the cool, detached precision of, a surgeon removing a tumor.
He claims wisdom, but what he really displays is this cold, calculating psychosis.
And that brings us right into the execution.
Okay, so the motive is set. The eye must go. Now we get to the planning, and this is where the narrator really believes he proves his genius, sanity.
Oh, absolutely. His obsession is less with the outcome itself and more with the process.
He keeps drawing our attention to it, doesn't he?
Oh.
How wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation.
For him, that methodical preparation is the single greatest defense against any charge of madness.
And the irony is just dripping from every word. He points out that he was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him.
That calculated kindness, it serves a few purposes, right? First, it builds trust. It eliminates any possible suspicion.
And maybe it even gives him a twisted sense of moral superiority. Look how kind I am. A kind person can't possibly be mad.
That kindness is the very essence of dissimulation. It's the art of misleading someone by presenting a false front. Poe is showing us that cunning and madness are not mutually exclusive.
In fact, the cunning serves the madness.
The more calculated the cover-up, the more profoundly disturbing the mind underneath.
And the meticulousness of the preparation over those 7 nights is just astounding. It all hinges on this ritual with the dark lantern.
This nightly routine is a psychological performance. Every night, about midnight, the narrator enters, oh, so gently.
He's showing his self-restraint. He's not acting on impulse.
No, he's performing a ritual that his obsession dictates.
And the lantern itself is the perfect symbol for his mind, isn't it?
It really is. It's kept all closed so that no light shone out. It holds the potential for revelation, for illumination, but he keeps it contained.
He keeps the darkness of his intent locked away until the one moment he chooses to let it out.
And the slowness of it all is a hallmark of his control. He measures his movements in minutes, not steps. I mean, think about this. It took him a full hour.
60 minutes.
Just to place his whole head inside the door.
It's unbelievable.
And he offers that up as his proof. He taunts us with it. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this?
That hour of calculated stillness is meant to be his proof of a superior will. A madman acts on impulse, he thinks, whereas he, the sane one, can sustain this agonizingly deliberate pace.
And that's where the tension is. The listener knows the goal is insane, but the method is rigorously, terrifyingly sane.
And yet, despite all this meticulous planning, for 7 straight nights, the mission fails.
Right, because of the veto of the closed eye. For 7 nights, he can't do it. And why?
Because the singular target, the eye, was always closed.
This detail just confirms the core of his neurosis. He's not just trying to kill the old man.
He's trying to kill the gaze.
Exactly. If the eye's closed, the malevolent symbol is neutralized. The threat is gone, and so the compulsion to murder just dissipates.
It really shows that the old man's life is almost irrelevant. It's only the symbolic presence of that eye that matters.
So he has to find a way to check on the eye's status without waking the old man. This involves extreme caution. He describes undoing the lantern so cautiously, for the hinges creaked.
All just to let a single thin ray fall right onto the eye.
And he likens that ray to the thread of a spider. It's the surreal, almost surgical beam of light that he's using for microscopic scrutiny.
He's looking for the one thing that will justify what he's about to do. And if the eye is closed, the justification isn't there, and he backs off.
Which leads to the morning after and the cover story. This just underscores the profound level of his deception. Every morning he goes boldly into the chamber,
speaking courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, asking how he slept.
He's actively testing the limits of suspicion. He's making himself the least suspicious person imaginable. He's almost daring the old man to question his kind act.
He even says the old man would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect what was happening every night at 12. The dissimulation is so layered, so constant. The whole week is a terrifying theatrical show.
And that repetition, night after night, it just feeds his self-congratulation. Each failed attempt because of the closed eye only reinforces his patience and, in his mind, his wisdom. He's practicing.
Practicing for the perfect crime. And that brings us to the 8th night.
The night everything changes.
So 7 nights of rehearsal and restraint all lead to this 8th night, where the careful balance just completely shatters.
He enters the room with this amplified sense of power and control, which, in any classic tragedy is the immediate signal that things are about to go wrong.
He's drunk on his own cleverness.
He really is. He says, "Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity." He feels triumphant before he's even done anything.
And he equates his slow movement, slower than a watch's minute hand, with total mastery over the situation.
He's so consumed by his own genius that he says he fairly chuckled at the idea.
And that chuckle, that tiny moment of private glee, that's the trigger for the disaster.
That little noise is just enough to startle the old man, who moves on the bed. And then comes the technical failure that breaks the ritual. His thumb slips
on the tin fastening of the lantern.
It makes a sound, and the old man springs up, crying out, "Who's there?"
All that carefully constructed silence, all that control, it's undone by a tiny metal hinge and a flicker of self-satisfaction.
That moment is so critical. The narrator is no longer in control of the soundscape, and that shift is what starts his final descent.
But he manages to stay physically still for an agonizingly long time.
Yes, that hour of silent waiting. He keeps perfectly still, not moving a muscle, knowing the old man is sitting up in the pitch dark, just listening.
And this is where we get that really chilling moment of shared terror. The narrator says he knew exactly what the old man was feeling.
Just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall.
That detail is so specific. The death watches.
It is. Historically, the death watch refers to the ticking sound made by certain kinds of beetles in the walls of old houses.
Okay.
And in the quiet of the night, it became associated with the ticking of a clock, and so the ticking down of your life, an omen of death.
So the old man is sitting there, hearing the slow, ominous passage of time, while the narrator, motionless in the dark, is the cause of it.
And the narrator actually shows a moment of genuine empathy here. He recognizes the groan of mortal terror.
He describes it so vividly, a low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe.
And he relates to it. He admits that the same sound had often welled up from my own bosom. He knows the feeling of mortal fear, and yet it doesn't stop him. In fact, it fuels him. He says he pitied him, although I chuckled at heart.
That is the essence of his madness, isn't it?
Yeah.
That simultaneous pity and self-satisfied glee.
He can perceive the emotion, he can understand it, but he just uses it and delights in his own power over the victim.
So the waiting finally ends. He decides to open the lantern, just a tiny crack.
a very, very little crevice, until that single dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shoots out and falls right on the eye.
And there it is, the final revelation.
The eye is open, wide, wide open. It's dull blue with a hideous veil over it. And that sight, the confirmation of his obsession, it drives him into a fury.
And now comes the sound. The sound that proves his initial claim of having over-acuteness of the senses, the beating of the old man's heart.
He describes it first as a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton.
That description, enveloped in cotton, is so crucial.
It is. Why cotton? Cotton muffles things, it suppresses sound. The sound is low, it's subdued, but it's persistent. The heart, the symbol of life, is trying to be suppressed, but it won't be.
It's the sound of a muffled life that just refuses to be silenced.
And it doesn't calm him, it does the opposite. It increases his fury, acting as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. His fear is replaced by this frantic energy.
And the sound gets louder.
It grows quicker and louder every instant. He assumes the old man's terror must be extreme, but it's clear the rising volume is really just his own psychological stress building.
He's struggling to hold the lantern still, trying to maintain that illusion of control, but the hellish tattoo of the heart is winning.
And then comes the critical shift. His meticulous plan gives way to pure panic. A new anxiety seizes him.
And it's a totally new fear. It's not about the eye anymore.
No, it's about an external threat. He's terrified that the sound would be heard by a neighbor.
His original obsession has just been completely replaced by a practical, desperate fear of being discovered.
The need to silence that sound overrides everything else. He realizes his patient waiting has actually created an unbearable auditory threat.
And so the dam breaks. Driven by that intolerable sound, he acts on pure impulse.
With a loud yell, he throws open the lantern, leaps into the room, drags the old man to the floor, and pulls the heavy bed over him.
The murder itself is brutal, quick, and driven entirely by the frantic need to make it quiet.
And the irony is just. It's thicker than anything. He spends an hour achieving silence at the door, but the sound of the heart drives him to scream and act violently.
Creating way more noise than the heartbeat ever could.
Exactly. The attempt to prevent detection leads directly to the most detectable act, the yell. The very scream that alerts the neighbors and ultimately seals his fate.
The violence is over. And just like that, the narrator snaps right back to his cold, calculated persona.
He's desperately trying to regain his footing, to prove that the cleanup, the efficiency of it all, will somehow validate his original defense of sanity.
So first, he confirms the death.
Right. Even after the bed is over the victim, he notes the heart beats on, muffled, for many minutes. That sound motif just lingers, doesn't it? Even when the source is suppressed, it persists.
But eventually it stops. He patiently places his hand on the heart for many minutes. No pulsation. He was stone dead.
And his next thought?
His eye would trouble me no more. The obsession is physically, finally gone.
And he uses this renewed sense of calm to boast about his next steps. He calls them his wise precautions and says he worked hastily, but in silence, as if he's still in complete control.
But the details of these precautions are just utterly grisly. They reveal the depth of his detachment from reality.
He immediately moves to dismemberment. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs.
It's purely pragmatic for him. He's just reducing a human body to manageable pieces that are easier to hide.
It's the ultimate display of efficiency. He's not approaching the body with horror or remorse, but with the cold detachment of, I don't know, an engineer solving a logistical problem.
This meticulous, calculated brutality is his final, desperate attempt to present himself as a rational person, someone who anticipates and manages consequences perfectly.
And the hiding place he chooses is so clever, but so deeply disturbing in how simple it is.
He takes up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposits the parts between the scantlings, the structural beams underneath the floor.
He's literally leveraging the architecture of the house to bury his secret within its foundation. His triumph, the peak of his perceived cleverness, comes when he replaces the boards.
He does it so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye could have detected anything wrong. He thinks his method is flawless, undetectable.
And he notes his attention to detail, the final cleanup. No struggle, no witnesses.
And nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot, whatever.
He proudly proclaims he'd been too wary for that. And then we get that chilling punchline, delivered with this manic self-satisfaction.
A tub had caught all ha-ha.
That laugh, that ha, That's not the calm explanation of a rational person.
No, it's the outburst of a maniac congratulating himself on his own cleverness, and it completely undermines the very calmness he's been trying to project this whole time.
That moment just perfectly captures the paradox of Poe's madman. He's got the intelligence to execute a near-perfect crime,
But he lacks the self-awareness to suppress his own maniacal pride.
which is its own form of self-sabotage. He thinks the planks in the tub have made him invincible. He thinks he's transformed a panic-driven murder into a perfectly concealed disappearance.
But the one thing he didn't conceal was the state of his own mind.
Exactly. The scene is set for a confrontation. He is sitting literally on top of his greatest achievement and his greatest horror.
And just at that moment of his supposed triumph, the external world comes knocking.
Literally. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, still dark as midnight, when the bell rings and there's a knock at the door.
The police. A shriek was heard by a neighbor, confirming that his internal panic did have an external impact.
3 officers are there to search the premises.
What's incredible is how he responds. He says he opens the door with a light heart. He's completely confident in his work, in his lies.
He greets them with perfect suavity and offers his pre-made excuses. The shriek was, "My own in a dream. The old man is absent in the country."
This leads to this extraordinary moment of audacity. He doesn't seem nervous at all. He invites them in, tells them to search well.
He gives them a full tour of the apartment, even bringing them into the victim's own chamber to prove that everything is secure, undisturbed.
But the ultimate gesture of hubris, the absolute peak of his self-congratulation, is bringing chairs into that room for the officers to rest.
And where does he place his own seat?
Right on the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim.
It's pure theater. He is literally sitting on his crime, using the physical presence of the police, the symbols of order and justice, to reinforce the illusion of stability over the grave he just created.
And his manner convinces them. He's singularly at ease, chatting away about familiar things.
But that calm is entirely superficial. It's a psychological pressure cooker, and it just cannot hold against the weight of the hidden body and the enormous manic pride he is feeling.
Which brings us to the return of the phantom sound.
The transition from ease to anxiety is so swift, and it's physical. He says he starts to feel himself getting pale, he gets a headache, a ringing in his ears.
He tries to talk more freely to fight it off, but the ringing just becomes more distinct.
At first, he tries to rationalize it. It's just fatigue, it's nervousness, it's something internal. But the internal sound quickly forces its way out. He's soon forced to admit the terrifying truth.
The noise was not within my ears.
And he recognizes it instantly. He connects it right back to the sound that drove him to murder in the first place.
A low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton.
The beat of the heart has returned, or the hallucinated beat of his own guilt and panic has returned.
This is the genius of Poe's climax, isn't it? The sound just increases steadily, putting this immense psychological pressure on the narrator.
He tries desperately to cover it up. He talks faster. He starts arguing about trivial things in a high key and with violent gesticulations. But the noise just keeps increasing.
He tries to externalize his control again. He paces the floor with heavy strides, growing excited to fury.
He foams, he raves, he swears. He even swings the chair he was sitting on and grates it on the floorboards, trying to create enough external noise to drown out the internal one.
And it doesn't work. The noise arose overall and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, louder.
It's his own pulse, his own guilt, amplified beyond what he can bear by those hyperacute senses he was so proud of.
At this point, his reality just completely fragments. He projects his internal horror onto the officers.
He refuses to believe they don't hear it. The sound is so loud to him, so completely dominating the room, that he thinks they must hear it. They must suspect. They must know.
And the final insult, the final twist of the psychological knife for him, is the belief that they're making a mockery of my horror.
Right, with their hypocritical smiles. They're just being polite, chatting, but to his shattered mind, their calm is a calculated insult. They're mocking his pain, mocking his failure.
And that shift from fear of being found out to the agonizing belief that he's being mocked by his silent judges, that's the breaking point.
He can't tolerate the sound, and he can't tolerate the perceived scorn. He feels like he has to scream or he'll die.
Which leads to the climax, the final breakdown. Driven by that intolerable sound, he shrieks the confession, turning his internal collapse into the ultimate external admission of guilt.
"Villains!" he shrieks. "Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here." It is the beating of his hideous heart.
The man who spent 8 nights proving his methodical control loses everything in one final, frantic, uncontrolled scream.
His whole sanity defense just crumbles, because the one thing he couldn't silence was the rhythmic, persistent demand of his own conscience, which Poe so brilliantly externalizes as the beating heart.
And the ultimate irony is that the police came because of a scream in the first place. He spent the whole night fighting external noise, only to end the story with his own self-betraying scream.
A total contradiction to the calmness he claimed at the very start.
So if we just, synthesize this whole story, what we're really seeing is Poe's absolute mastery of the unreliable narrator.
Without a doubt. The very meticulousness, the caution that the narrator presents as his proof of sanity are, for us, the most damning evidence of his profound, calculating madness.
His planning wasn't really to hide the body from the police.
No, it was to temporarily hide the guilt from himself.
And the sound of the heart has to be the most potent device of self-betrayal in all of literature.
I think so. At first, it's the victim's actual heart, amplified by the narrator's terror. Then, after the murder, the sound comes back as a phantom, an internal, unmanageable piece of his own guilt.
He successfully killed the man, but he failed to kill the compulsion or the conscience.
Which Poe embodies in that terrifying, persistent rhythm.
The story really is a terrifying psychological study. I think the key takeaway is that the most elaborate external preparations, the wise precautions, the cutting up of the body, replacing the floorboards, none of it can protect you from an internal collapse.
The narrator's efforts to prove his control and his wisdom are the very mechanics that ultimately drive him to self-betrayal.
It's just a perfect showcase of Poe's ability to create this sustained, visceral terror using purely psychological tools. You, the listener, are forced right into the mind of the murderer, seeing the world through his distorted yet hyper-aware senses.
And that experience, well, it's unforgettable.
It really is.
I have one final provocative thought, which ties back to the source material. The original publication of the story was often accompanied by visual art, illustrations like the ones later done by the artist Terry Clark.
Right.
And this invites us to think about how visual interpretations affect the horror of it all.
That's a great point. The text forces us to imagine the vulture eye, the slow creeping, the dismemberment. But if this were a modern film, what sound design, what exact auditory texture would capture the terror of that beating heart?
Is it mechanical? Is it biological? Or is it something purely supernatural?
And what kind of image would you create to truly capture the sound of that heart that drives the narrator completely mad?
That's something for you all to mull over as you reflect on this truly terrifying tale.
A great question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this intense deep dive into Poe.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. And thank you all for tuning in to Book on a Shelf. If you enjoyed our exploration of the Telltale Heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We really do rely on your support to keep bringing you these in-depth explorations.
We certainly do.
Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll continue our literary deep dives.